In the bustling heart of Lagos, there lived a young pastor named Pastor Emmanuel. He was the kind of man every mother prayed for, handsome, soft-spoken, with a Bible always tucked under his arm and a heart pure as gold. He wasn't just a preacher, he was a dream. One evening, after a long revival service, as he wiped the sweat from his forehead, he saw her, standing by the church door, a vision in white. Her name was Amara, skin glowing like polished bronze, hair tumbling down her back, eyes deep and mysterious. "My God," Emmanuel whispered under his breath. Is this an angel?" He could barely focus as he shook hands with the other church members. His eyes kept wandering back to her. She smiled sweetly and lowered her gaze. After the service, he rushed to catch up with her. "Pastor Emmanuel." "Sister, I don't believe we've met before." Amara, laughing softly. "No, Pastor, it's my first time here." Pastor Emmanuel, smiling, slightly nervous. "Well, welcome, very welcome. I hope you come again." "By God's grace, I will." He didn't sleep that night. He tossed and turned, praying, fasting, asking God if this was the wife he had been waiting for. Days turned into weeks. Each Sunday, Amara came back, always sitting at the third pew, always smiling when he preached, and each time Pastor Emmanuel felt his heart racing faster. Finally, one Sunday after service, he couldn't hold it anymore. Pastor Emmanuel, awkwardly scratching his neck. "Sister Amara, I don't know if this is appropriate, but would you allow me to court you, properly, under God's guidance?" Amara, pausing, looking into his eyes. "Pastor, if it's truly God's will, who am I to say no?" Emmanuel beamed like a child given candy, but Amara had one condition. Amara, gently, "Pastor, if you truly honor me, you must respect my boundaries. No touching, no kissing, nothing. Until after marriage." Pastor Emmanuel, blinking fast. Of course, I'm a man of God. I wouldn't even dream of, you know." Yet as they spent more time together, temptation grew. Emmanuel, strong as he was, found himself struggling. Once, after a prayer meeting, he walked her to her door. The moonlight shimmered on her skin. She turned, so close he could smell the coconut oil in her hair. He leaned in, just a little. Amara, gently pushing him back, smiling. "Pastor, remember, you're a pastor. Wait for marriage." Pastor Emmanuel, groaning. "God help me. This is not easy." Another time, at a church retreat, he almost brushed her hand, just barely, but she pulled back and laughed. Pastor, touch not the anointed." It became almost a joke between them, but a serious one. No touching, no intimacy. Finally, after 6 months of pure, holy courtship, Pastor Emmanuel proposed. A simple, beautiful engagement. The whole church rejoiced. The wedding day came, and it was glorious. Amara walked down the aisle like a queen, and Emmanuel felt like the richest man alive. "Thank you, Jesus," he whispered at the altar. "I have found my favor." The honeymoon. They traveled to a private beach resort. Emmanuel was practically floating with excitement. He had waited so long. Now, finally, he could have his wife. In the honeymoon suite, he waited on the bed, fidgeting, sweating. Amara stepped out of the bathroom, wearing a silky robe. She smiled shyly. Pastor Emmanuel, grinning, "Come, my bride, come to me." She walked slowly toward him. Emmanuel reached out and pulled her gently into his arms. As he began to undress her, he froze. There, staring back at him, was not what he expected. He stumbled backward off the bed, almost knocking over a lamp. Pastor Emmanuel, voice shaking, What is this?" Amara stood there, robe open, chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Amara, softly, "Pastor, I was born different. I have both male and female parts." Pastor Emmanuel, stammering, Jesu, eh? How is it possible?" Amara, tears filling her eyes, "I was born intersex. My parents, they didn't know what to do. They raised me as a girl. I chose to live as a woman. That's who I am." Emmanuel sat down, head spinning, whispering, Why didn't you tell me?" Amara, voice breaking, "I was scared. Every man I told rejected me. I thought, maybe if you loved me enough, you'd see me for who I am, not what I was born with. The room was silent, except for the sound of the waves crashing outside. Emmanuel's mind raced. He felt betrayed, confused, angry. But he also remembered something. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Love covers a multitude of sins. He looked at Amara, standing there, trembling, vulnerable. She wasn't a monster, she wasn't a liar, she was a woman who had been fighting her whole life to be loved. Slowly, Emmanuel stood up. He walked over and gently closed her robe. I won't lie to you, Amara. This is a lot for me. I need time. I need prayer. But one thing I know. He cupped her tear-streaked face. I married you because of your soul, and that hasn't changed. Amara broke down, sobbing into his chest. He held her all night. No intimacy, no expectations, just pure human love. And in that moment, Emmanuel realized real love was not about what was easy. Real love was about choosing to stay, even when everything inside you screamed to run. The next morning, Pastor Emmanuel and Amara sat on the balcony, wrapped in silence. The sun was rising, casting golden light over the waves. Emmanuel sipped his coffee slowly, staring at the ocean. Amara sat opposite him, playing nervously with the hem of her robe. Finally, Emmanuel spoke. Amara, when we get back home, we have to be ready. Amara, whispering, ready for what? Pastor Emmanuel, looking at her seriously, people talk. The world, it doesn't understand things like this. Even the church, maybe especially the church, they will judge. Amara's eyes welled up with tears. Amara, voice cracking. I don't want to lose you, Emmanuel. I can't face that. He stood up, walked to her and kneeled by her side. Pastor Emmanuel, taking her hands. You won't lose me. I'm your husband. In God's eyes, in my heart, you're my wife. We'll face it together. Back in Lagos, the first few weeks were peaceful. They returned to church, smiling, hiding their secret. But secrets never stay hidden for long. It started small, whispers in the choir, then came the rumors. The pastor's wife, something is not right. I heard she was born different. How can a man of God marry someone like that? One Sunday after service, as Emmanuel stepped off the pulpit, his associate pastor, Brother Chaik, pulled him aside. Brother Chaik, lowering his voice, Pastor Emmanuel, there's talk, bad talk, about Sister Amara. Pastor Emmanuel, tight-lipped. And what talk is that, Brother Chaik? Brother Chaik, nervous. That, she's not a real woman. The words hung heavy in the air. Emmanuel felt anger bubbling inside him, not at Chaik, at the cruelty of people. Pastor Emmanuel, steady voice. Brother Chaik, did Jesus turn away the woman at the well because of her past? Did he shun Mary Magdalene because of her sins? We preach love, but do we live it? Brother Chaik looked down, embarrassed. Brother Chaik, mumbling, no, Pastor. Then tell the congregation, if they have a problem with my wife, they have a problem with me. And if they have a problem with me, they have a problem with God. But it didn't end there. The deacons summoned Emmanuel to a secret meeting. Deacon Philip, clearing his throat. Pastor, we respect you, we love you. But this situation, it's affecting the church image. Pastor Emmanuel, calm but firm. What situation? That I married a woman who happens to have a complex medical history. Deacon Philip, people are threatening to leave. Tithes are dropping. Emmanuel stood up slowly. Pastor Emmanuel, voice rising. Then let them leave. Let the money dry up. I'd rather preach to empty chairs than bow to hypocrites. The deacons stared at him, stunned. At home that night, Emmanuel found Amara crying in the bathroom. She had overheard everything. Amara, sobbing, maybe you should just leave me. Save your ministry. Save yourself. Emmanuel grabbed her shoulders firmly. Almost shouting, don't you ever say that again. You are my ministry now. You are my testimony. Amara collapsed into his arms, and they wept together. On the following Sunday, Pastor Emmanuel stood before the packed church. He looked out at the faces, some angry, some confused, some heartbroken. He took a deep breath. Pastor Emmanuel, steady. Brothers and sisters, today I stand before you not just as your pastor, but as a man who chose love over fear, a man who chose truth over tradition, a man who chose Amara. Yes, my wife was born different, but she is fearfully and wonderfully made, and if you cannot accept her, then you have never truly accepted Christ. The church fell into stunned silence. Some people walked out, but others, quietly, hesitantly, stood up and began to clap. One by one, the sound grew, until half the church was on its feet. Tears streamed down Amara's face, where she sat in the front pew. Sister Ngozi, the oldest woman in the church, walked to her and hugged her tightly. Sister Ngozi, whispering, "You are welcome here, my daughter." It wasn't easy. They lost friends, they lost members, but they gained something greater, a real, true church, built on love, not appearances. And Emmanuel and Amara, their love grew deeper with every trial, because they had faced the fire and came out pure. Real love had won. 1 year later, the old church was gone, not the building, the spirit inside it. Those who stayed were the real ones. And from the fire of the scandal, a new ministry was born, House of Grace, a place for the rejected, the broken, and the misunderstood. Every Sunday, the church was now packed, not with the perfect, but with the wounded. Ex-drug addicts, single mothers, people born different, like Amara. People's churches usually whispered about, or threw away. One Sunday morning, Pastor Emmanuel stood in his simple white robe, looking out at the crowd. Pastor Emmanuel, smiling. Today, we don't judge here. We love each other. We heal. We embrace. Because that's what Jesus did. He didn't sit with kings. He sat with the broken. The crowd erupted in claps and amen. Amara sat in the front row, holding a little notebook. She had started something too, a counseling ministry for people like her. She called it Beauty in Every Battle. After the service, a young woman approached them. She wore baggy clothes, head down, trembling. Young woman, whispering, "Pastor, Sister Amara, can I talk to you?" They led her gently to Emmanuel's office. Inside, she broke down crying. Young woman, "My family disowned me. The church told me I was cursed because I was born, like both." Amara reached out and held her hand tightly. Amara, softly, "You are not cursed. You are not forgotten. You are beloved." The girl sobbed harder. Pastor Emmanuel, voice thick with emotion, "You see this woman here?" Pointing at Amara. "The world told her she was wrong, but God said she was wonderfully made, and today, she is my queen." The young woman looked up, her tear-filled eyes shining with a flicker of hope. Weeks later, that young woman, whose name was Zena, became the first member of Beauty in Every Battle. Soon dozens came, men and women, young and old, people born different, people cast aside. And the church, it was more alive than ever, not because it was full of perfect people, but because it was full of grace. One night, in their bedroom, Amara sat by the window, looking at the stars. Emmanuel came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her, whispering, "Are you happy?" Amara leaned back into him, smiling, "I'm more than happy. I'm whole." He kissed her forehead. "You were always whole. The world just didn't have the eyes to see it." She turned, tears sparkling in her eyes. Amara, softly, "Thank you for loving me when it wasn't easy." He smiled, brushing her hair back. "You showed me what real love is, Amara. Not easy love, not safe love. Real love. The kind that fights and forgives and never lets go." They stood there in the dark, holding each other, two souls who had fought the world and won. Together, the House of Grace grew into a movement. Other churches around Africa started inviting Pastor Emmanuel and Amara to speak. Their story became a lifeline to thousands who thought they were alone. And wherever they went, they carried one message: "You are not a mistake. You are a miracle." 2 years later, House of Grace was no longer just one little church. It had spread across Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya. It had become a movement. And Emmanuel and Amara, they had become symbols of hope. But with greatness came greater storms. One day in the church office, Pastor Emmanuel sat with Amara opening an email. It was an invitation from an international Christian TV network based in the US. Amara, nervous. "You sure we're ready for this?" Pastor Emmanuel, smiling. "Were we ever ready for anything, my love? We just walk by faith." Amara laughed, but inside she felt the storm coming. Fast forward, the TV interview in America. Lights, cameras. The studio was full. The host, a sharp-looking man in a suit, smiled warmly but spoke with a slight edge. Host, turning to Emmanuel, "Pastor, people are saying you've twisted the gospel to justify, well, abnormalities. How do you answer them?" The audience got silent. Some crossed their arms, waiting to see if Emmanuel would stumble. Emmanuel squeezed Amara's hand under the table. He leaned into the microphone and said, "The only thing I twisted was my own pride. God taught me that loving Amara wasn't rebellion, it was obedience. He taught me that the cross is not for perfect people. It's for the broken, the different, the misunderstood." Amara spoke too, voice trembling but strong. "God made me whole, even when people said I was a mistake. I'm not ashamed. I'm a testimony." The crowd murmured. Some clapped, some didn't. The TV clip went viral across Africa and the world. Some called them heroes, some called them devils. The hate came fast, anonymous death threats, phone calls with no voice on the other end, ugly comments online, even some old church friends publicly disowned them. One night at home, Amara sat at the edge of their bed, shaking. Amara, voice breaking, "Maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we should have stayed small, quiet." Emmanuel knelt down in front of her, looking into her tearful eyes. "We didn't choose this road, Amara. God chose us. And if we have to walk through fire to get to his purpose, then let's burn together." He took her hand and placed it over his heart. "As long as you're by my side, I fear nothing." She leaned down and kissed him. They prayed together, right there on the floor. Through the storm, one night after a powerful revival service in Nairobi, a man tried to attack them with a knife outside the church. But something, maybe angels, maybe the sheer presence of God, stopped him. The man dropped the knife, fell to his knees, and started crying, sobbing, "I was sent to destroy you, but your message broke me. I want to know this Jesus you preach." Right there, on the dusty road under the African moon, the man gave his life to Christ. Years later, Amara and Emmanuel stood on the stage of a massive stadium. Thousands of people from all backgrounds cheered. On the big screen behind them was the slogan, "God doesn't make mistakes." Amara looked at Emmanuel, tears in her eyes. Amara, whispering, "Look what God did." Pastor Emmanuel, grinning, "He took our shame and turned it into a crown." They raised their hands together toward the heavens. The crowd roared, and the movement, the message, became unstoppable. You were never a mistake. You were the miracle the world wasn't ready for. 5 years later, the ministry had exploded. They weren't just pastors anymore. They were leaders, symbols, global voices. News channels called them the couple who changed the church forever. But now, the biggest test was coming. And this time, it wasn't from haters. It was from people with smiling faces and hidden knives. One day in Abuja, Nigeria, inside a golden skyscraper, Emmanuel and Amara sat across from two powerful men. Government officials, men who controlled policies, money, futures. One of them, a man in a dark blue suit, leaned forward, smiling. "Pastor Emmanuel, Sister Amara, you have influence now, real influence. We could fund you, build you mega churches, TV stations, private jets." Amara blinked, confused. "All we ask is a little compromise. Soften your message. Talk less about people born different. Make it more acceptable for the world stage." There it was, the devil's deal wrapped in silk. Inside a golden skyscraper, Emmanuel and Amara sat across from two powerful men. Government officials, men who controlled policies, money, futures. One of them, a man in a dark blue suit, leaned forward. "They're offering us the world." Amara stopped pacing, staring at him. "Amara," softly, "but what if we lose our souls to gain it?" Silence. Then Emmanuel stood up, walked to her and took her hands. Pastor Emmanuel, voice steady. We didn't start this to be rich. We started it to be real. I choose you, Amara. I choose truth, no matter the cost. Tears filled her eyes. Amara, whispering, then let's lose everything before we lose ourselves. They hugged tightly, warriors preparing for battle. The next day, back in the gold building, they sat across from the officials again. The official, smiling. So, Pastor, are we partners? Emmanuel leaned forward, meeting their eyes. Pastor Emmanuel, firmly, we are not for sale. We don't need your money, we have a mission. And our source is higher than you. The officials' faces darkened instantly, threatening. Think carefully, Pastor. We can make you, or break you. Emmanuel smiled softly. We already died to ourselves years ago. You can't kill dead men. Amara smiled too, fierce, fearless. They stood up and walked out without looking back. And then, something unimaginable happened. Without government help, without mega-church money, their ministry exploded even bigger. Because when you stay faithful, God Himself becomes your backer. Years later, in a massive stadium in Accra, Ghana, over 100,000 people gathered. Different tribes, different tongues, different scars, all worshipping together. Pastor Emmanuel and Amara stood hand in hand on the stage. Tears rolled down Emmanuel's face. Pastor Emmanuel, voice cracking, the world said we couldn't, but heaven said we could. You are not forgotten. You are not broken. You are not abandoned. You are God's masterpiece. The crowd erupted into worship. Amara leaned into his ear and whispered, Amara, smiling, we didn't sell out. We cashed in on a kingdom that never fades. He kissed her forehead in front of everyone. The stadium shook with praise. When you refuse to sell your soul, heaven writes your story in gold. Years later, Amara sat by a wide window in their peaceful home, overlooking thousands of trees swaying under a golden sunset. The world had changed, slowly, painfully, but it had changed, because two people refused to bow, because two people dared to love without fear. On her lap rested a freshly printed book. Its title, Whole, Finding Beauty in Every Broken Place, by Amara Emmanuel. A quiet evening. Emmanuel entered the room, older now, but his smile was even deeper. He kissed her forehead, just like he did on their wedding day. Pastor Emmanuel, teasing, so, the world's about to meet the real Amara, hmm? She laughed, cheeks glowing. Amara, softly, not just me. They'll meet everyone who was told they weren't enough. They'll meet a God who sees every hidden part and still calls it good. He sat beside her, looking at the book. Pastor Emmanuel, smiling. You're still the bravest soul I've ever known. She leaned into his shoulder. Amara, whispering. You're still the only man who ever waited for all of me. They sat there, hearts beating in perfect time. A month later, the book hit the world like a storm. Translated into 47 languages, it broke records. Churches changed, families healed, lost souls found hope again. The story of a woman born with both parts but loved as a whole rewrote what people thought perfect looked like. This time, it wasn't just about preaching, it was a celebration. Emmanuel and Amara walked on stage, hand in hand, their children behind them. Yes, their children. They had adopted dozens, orphans rejected by others, but not by them. The crowd roared. Pastor Emmanuel, lifting his microphone, voice strong, we were never called to fit in. We were called to light up the darkness. Amara, smiling through tears, you are not a mistake. You are not forgotten. You are not broken. You are exactly who God had in mind. The crowd stood, crying, laughing, shouting. Some fell to their knees, some hugged strangers, some just lifted their hands to the sky. The love that filled that stadium could have carried a broken world back to life. Real love doesn't hide from the truth. It embraces it. It redeems it. It changes the world with it. Moral lesson: true love and faith are tested not by comfort, but by courage. This story teaches us that love is not about perfection. It's about acceptance, honesty, and sacrifice. Pastor Emmanuel chose to see beyond biology and public opinion. He embraced the heart, the soul, and the faith of a woman the world rejected. In a world quick to judge and slow to understand, this story reminds us, love is bigger than labels, faith is deeper than tradition, and grace is meant for everyone, not just those who fit the mold. Let us remember, God doesn't make mistakes, He makes miracles out of what others call messes. Dear viewers, you've just heard a story many are afraid to tell. Subscribe and share if you believe in truth and courage. Think you,